All right, folks, we need to talk about what's unfolding in Europe right now, because Ursula von der Leyen just dropped a warning that nobody saw coming. The head of the European Commission stood before the European Parliament and declared that a critical raw materials crisis is no longer a distant threat. It's right around the corner. Those are her exact words. Europe, with all its dependence on imported energy and raw materials, is about to face a supply crunch that could shake the entire economy. And you know what's wild? Volkswagen is already preparing to halt production because of semiconductor shortages. This was announced just yesterday. So when the chief of the European Commission tells you a crisis is imminent, maybe, just maybe, you should pay attention. I spent years working inside a major, well-known media organization, watching how the news got shaped and twisted to serve agendas instead of truth. I couldn't do it anymore. I walked out. Now I'm on my own. I say what needs to be said, and I bring you the stories that actually matter. And listen, if you value this kind of honest, no-nonsense reporting, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you really want to support independent journalism that doesn't bow to corporate narratives, consider becoming a channel sponsor. It means the world to me, and it keeps this operation running. Now back to Ursula and her crisis warning. She says Europe needs to take additional measures to secure economic safety, but what measures exactly? We'll find out later, she promises. But here's where it gets interesting. At the exact same time she's warning about shortages and economic instability, the European Commission is planning to throw 42 billion euros, that's billion with a B, into expanding the Erasmus Plus program. You know, the education, youth and sports initiative. Sounds nice, right? Except this expansion is specifically aimed at North Africa and the Middle East. Ursula is out here talking about building bridges between continents, saying Europe and Mediterranean countries can't exist without each other. Algeria, Egypt, Syria, Tunisia, all of them are so important, she says. Meanwhile, critics are raising alarms about increasing migration flows and new risks in European universities. The Austrian Freedom Party, a right-wing group, is asking the obvious question. While European taxpayers are struggling with inflation, war, and mass illegal immigration, Brussels wants to invest 42 billion euros in regions like North Africa and the Middle East. Really? Brussels, of course, defends the plan, claiming it's designed to combat illegal migration and smuggling networks while simultaneously creating legal pathways for people from North Africa and the Middle East. So, legal immigration channels, they say. And here's the kicker. Despite ongoing human rights issues in Egypt, the EU leadership is handing Cairo a 75 million euro aid package. That's just part of it. The total investment in Egypt will reach 7.4 billion euros by 2027. So let me get this straight. When there's a financial or strategic interest, human rights violations suddenly become invisible. But where there's no advantage, oh, then they shout from the rooftops about abuses. That's the modern reality, folks, and even European media outlets are starting to discuss it openly. This selective morality, this convenient blindness, it's not new, but it's becoming harder to ignore. Now let's shift to Germany, because there's some serious tension brewing in Berlin. Thousands of people took to the streets in protest, and the reason? Comments made by Chancellor Friedrich Merz about illegal migration and the changing face of German cities. Representatives from the Green Party spoke at the rally, which was organized by an initiative called Together Against the Right. Who's funding them? Nobody's saying. We'll find out eventually, I'm sure. What did Merz actually say? He stated that Germany has made progress on illegal migration, but the visual changes in cities are still causing concern. He also mentioned that the Interior Ministry is working on expanding deportation mechanisms. That's what sparked outrage. The opposition demanded an apology. Merz refused. He doubled down, in fact. He said his words reflect the real concerns of citizens, and then he threw out this line. Ask your daughters, ask your friends, ask your acquaintances. Everyone will confirm this is a problem, at least after dark. Strong words from the German Chancellor, and they hit a nerve. Almost immediately, a protest was organized. People were mobilized and brought out into the streets. The rally's slogan? We are the daughters. A direct symbolic response to Merz's rhetoric. On social media, people are telling Merz that he's the problem with the urban environment and that cities would look a lot better without him. If you're still with me, go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about what's happening in Germany, in Europe, in the world right now. And don't forget to like and subscribe, it actually helps more than you think. But there's more coming out of Germany, and this one's a bombshell. Patrick Sensburg, the president of the German Reservist Association, just declared that without mandatory military service, the country won't be able to defend itself. Right now, there's a debate in Germany about which service model is better, but the majority of young Germans are categorically opposed to military service. Many cite conscientious objections. Here's where it gets dark. Sensburg estimates that in the event of war, up to 1,000 soldiers could be lost or seriously injured every day. They've already done the math, and those soldiers would need to be replaced by reservists. That's the cold, brutal reality they're spelling out. They're telling people exactly what to prepare for if the worst-case scenario unfolds. And as you know, they're not ruling it out. The fear-mongering, the escalation, it's happening every single day. Sensburg also pointed out that reservists aren't just needed for the military. They're essential for civil defense, firefighting, the Red Cross. It's not the best slogan, but at least it's honest, he said. The words are harsh, but they're direct. And honestly, I'd rather hear uncomfortable truths than comforting lies. Unfortunately, Germany's also dealing with another crisis this fall. Avian flu has swept through farms in Brandenburg. Tens of thousands of birds have been culled to stop the spread. They're taking all necessary measures, but the problem has already spread beyond the farms. Hundreds of lifeless cranes were found in ponds. Volunteers, shocked by the scale of the tragedy, are collecting the birds. Farmer associations are sounding the alarm. At least for now, the media is reporting the truth. They're not hiding it from people. But we're watching closely to see what happens next. And speaking of mass protests, let's jump over to Ireland real quick. Irish citizens took to the streets against illegal immigration. As usual, there were clashes, and as usual, there was zero communication with the dissatisfied public. Same old story. Now, over in France, things took a different turn. According to the Paris prosecutor, the imperial jewels stolen from the Louvre last Sunday were worth 88 million euros, and that doesn't even include their historical value to France itself. More than 100 investigators are now working the case. But here's the really interesting part. The day after the Louvre heist, another museum was hit. They tried to keep it quiet, but it leaked anyway. At the Maison des Lumières Denis Diderot in northern France, nearly 2,000 gold and silver coins from the 15th century disappeared overnight. Many of these coins are unique. Preliminary reports say the criminals acted professionally and knew exactly what they were looking for. Investigators are saying this is a trend now. Museums and collections across France have been getting robbed since early September. They're openly hinting that this negative trend is accelerating. There's no escaping it. All right, here's a fun one. London and Scotland are literally arguing over who should pay the bills for visits by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I'm not making this up. The Scottish government doesn't want to cover the costs for the summer trips made by President Trump and Vice President Vance. And London, they don't want to spend the money either. Scotland's finance minister wants to be reimbursed by the London Treasury for about £20 million in law enforcement and security expenses during Trump's July visit to his Scottish golf courses. They also want the British government to pay £6 million for the security costs of Vance's vacation in August, but the British government insists that Scotland should pay because these were private visits, not official government business. So there you have it, folks. They can't figure out who should foot the bill. Meanwhile, back in the United States, President Trump just received an award called the Architect of Peace from the Richard Nixon Foundation. It's a prestigious prize that was established in 1995 after Nixon's passing and is awarded for contributions to strengthening world peace. That's the official description. The ceremony was conducted by Nixon's daughter, Tricia Nixon Cox. Mainstream media, especially outlets aligned with Democrats, are predictably silent about this. They're not covering it. Instead, they're busy planting stories and narratives. I'm sure you've noticed. So let's recap what we've covered today. Ursula von der Leyen warned Europe about an impending raw materials crisis while simultaneously pushing a €42 billion expansion into North Africa and the Middle East through the Erasmus program. Germany's Chancellor Merz sparked protests by speaking bluntly about migration and urban safety, refusing to apologize despite backlash. The head of Germany's Reservist Association laid out the grim math of potential wartime casualties and the need for mandatory service. Avian flu devastated farms and wildlife in Brandenburg. France is experiencing a wave of professional museum heists targeting priceless artifacts. London and Scotland are bickering over who pays for Trump and Vance's private visits, and Trump received a peace award that the mainstream press won't talk about. These are the stories, the moments, the signals that matter. And if this kind of reporting resonates with you, if you think independent voices need to be heard, then please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you can, consider becoming a sponsor. It keeps this going, it keeps the truth flowing, and it means everything to me. Drop your thoughts in the comments, let me know what you think about everything that's happening. The conversation continues, and I'll be back with more soon.